I want to tell you a story about a woman who baked cupcakes for the entire office every Friday. She wasn't trying to get promoted. She wasn't angling for attention. She wasn't doing it because she had nothing better to do. She did it because she wanted to make people feel seen. She remembered birthdays. She left notes. She offered help when no one asked. She was kind. But here's the twist. People started to roll their eyes when she walked in. They whispered about her. It's too much. She's fake. What does she want? And eventually, she stopped baking. Because sometimes kindness doesn't make people love you. Sometimes kindness makes them hate you. Let me start by saying something that might feel counterintuitive. Kindness is not the absence of strength, it's the very expression of it. But we live in a world where kindness is often mistaken for people-pleasing, compliance, or weakness. People assume that if you're kind, you must be soft in all the wrong ways. That you don't know how to say no, that you'll bend, break, and bleed out trying to keep everyone happy. That's not kindness, that's martyrdom. Real kindness, grounded, sturdy, heart-forward kindness, is rooted in clarity. It's knowing exactly where you end and someone else begins. It's the courage to extend empathy without losing yourself in the process. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a person who gives generously, listens deeply, and offers compassion freely, but who also says things like, I can't take that on right now, or I won't allow myself to be treated that way, or that's not okay with me. That is real kindness. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not dripping with apology. It's strong and quiet and clear. Because true kindness doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means saying yes only when it comes from a place of integrity, not obligation. It's easy to be nice when it means avoiding conflict. It's harder to be kind when kindness costs you comfort. And kindness will cost you comfort. Because when you hold boundaries, when you refuse to be used, guilted, manipulated, or overextended, some people won't see that as strength. They'll see it as selfish or rude or ungrateful. But their discomfort doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It means you're doing something unfamiliar, especially in cultures, family, workplace, even religious communities, where self-abandonment has been dressed up as goodness. But true kindness never asks you to disappear. Kindness says, I see you and I see me. I care for you and I will not betray myself in the process. I want peace and I won't pretend everything's fine when it's not. When we think of kindness as being nice, we start confusing kindness with approval seeking. But niceness is reactive. Kindness is grounded. Kindness can be tender and firm. Kindness can be generous and boundaried. Kindness can hold the door and hold the line. When you understand that kindness is a boundary, not a weakness, everything shifts. You stop saying yes out of fear. You stop apologizing for your needs. You stop twisting yourself into something small just so no one calls you difficult. Because you realize that kindness isn't what you give to be liked, it's what you offer to stay true. And staying true in a world that profits off your guilt and silence, that is not weak, that is revolutionary. Being kind disrupts the shame-based systems people live in, written in a voice that blends deep psychological insight with a warm, honest tone. Being kind disrupts the shame-based systems people live in. We don't talk about this enough, but here's the truth. Most people are walking around with invisible armor, not because they're strong, but because they're afraid. They're afraid of being seen, afraid of being judged, afraid of not being enough. So they put on toughness, sarcasm, coolness, cynicism, whatever helps them survive in a world that taught them early on that love must be earned and that vulnerability is dangerous. So that's what a shame-based system looks like. It's not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it sounds like, don't be too sensitive. Get over it. You've got to prove yourself. It's a system that tells people they are only as valuable as their performance, their productivity, or their perfection. So now picture this. Into that system walks someone who leads with kindness, not performative niceness, not sugary smiles to keep the peace, but real, grounded, humanizing kindness, the kind that sees people, the kind that says you're enough, even when you're not winning, the kind that listens without fixing, the kind that stays soft, even when things are hard. That kind of kindness, it's not cute, it's disruptive because it does something radical. It interrupts the cycle. It whispers something that contradicts the system. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to hide. You're allowed to be human. And when people have spent years, maybe decades, believing they must prove their worth by hustling, numbing, or pretending, that message doesn't feel comforting. It feels threatening. Kindness starts to sound like a foreign language. People squint at it, mistrust it, push it away, not because they don't want it, but because they've never been taught how to receive it. Or worse, because the last time they trusted kindness, it came with strings attached. It was weaponized, or it disappeared when they disappointed someone. So when you are kind, truly kind, you are challenging the belief that shame is necessary for growth. You're saying, we don't have to beat people up to help them be better. You're saying you're worthy even when you're messy. You're saying compassion is not coddling, it's clarity with care. And that threatens the system. People who are used to shame may mock you. They might say you're being too emotional or too soft. They might accuse you of being fake, naive, or weak. But again, the reaction isn't about you. It's about the cracks your kindness creates in the walls they've built. Because when kindness walks into a shame-based environment, it doesn't just offer warmth, it exposes the cold. It makes people question what they've normalized. It asks them to look at how they've been treating themselves and others. And sometimes people aren't ready for that kind of truth. So yes, kindness can be met with resistance. So that doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're introducing a different way of being, a way where worth isn't conditional, where pain doesn't have to be hidden, where gentleness isn't weakness but wisdom. So keep being kind, not to avoid conflict, not to earn approval, not even to change people. Be kind because it's who you are, because your kindness might not just disrupt a system, it might heal it. Some people see kindness as manipulation because they've been hurt by it before, written with deep empathy, layered insight, and a storyteller's honesty. Some people see kindness as manipulation because they've been hurt by it before. Let's talk about trust. Because kindness should feel safe. It should feel warm, sincere, open. But for a lot of people, in fact, kindness can feel dangerous. It can trigger suspicion, fear, and even anger, not because kindness is inherently bad, but because of how it's been misused in their story. You see, when someone has been wounded by kindness, or more accurately by the misuse of kindness, they don't see it as a gift. They see it as a setup. They've learned, often through painful experience, that what looks like kindness at first often comes with a price tag, a favor with strings, a smile with an agenda, a gesture that turns into a transaction. So when you offer them care, compassion, or generosity, they're not feeling loved, they're feeling hunted. Their nervous system goes on alert. What do you want from me? Where's the trap? How are you going to hurt me? And listen, this isn't because they're broken. It's because at some point they were taught that kindness was a mask people wore to get what they wanted. They've been manipulated, guilt-tripped, used, discarded. They've been in situations where kindness was a currency, something that looked like love but was actually control. So now, even when your kindness is real, especially when it's real, they don't know what to do with it. They back away. They lash out. They accuse you of having an ulterior motive, and that can hurt deeply. Because your heart is open, your intentions are clean, you're trying to love without expectation, but you're met with resistance, sometimes even rejection. So here's the truth you have to hold. The reaction isn't about your character, it's about their history. It's about the fact that someone once smiled at them with the same warmth you're offering, then hurt them. That's the wound they're reacting to. And it doesn't mean you need to fix them or explain yourself or overcompensate to prove you're different. That's not your job. But what it does mean is this. If you choose to be kind, you also have to choose to be patient. Because for some people, learning to receive genuine kindness takes time, sometimes a long time. They need to watch you. See if your actions match your words. See if your warmth stays when you're not getting what you want. See if your care can withstand their defensiveness. And when you keep showing up with consistency, clarity, and no hidden agenda, they might start to believe, they might start to unlearn the idea that kindness is just manipulation dressed up in manners. They might start to soften. But even if they don't, your kindness still matters. It matters because it proves something, that kindness can exist without condition, that care doesn't have to be transactional, that people can be loved without being controlled. So if someone flinches at your kindness, don't take it personally, take it as a signpost. It means their story has sharp edges, and your kindness just touched one. That's not failure. That's truth. And truth held with grace is where real healing begins. Kindness exposes our rawness. It invites connection. And connection is terrifying, written with emotional clarity, depth, and a tone that mirrors the courage it takes to live this truth. Kindness exposes our rawness. It invites connection, and connection is terrifying. Let's talk about something nobody teaches us in school. Kindness isn't just about being good. It's about being seen. Real kindness isn't just a nice gesture or polite words. It's intimacy in action. It says, I'm showing you my heart. It says, I'm letting my guard down first. It says, I'm not trying to win, I'm trying to connect. And connection, its core, is the most beautiful and terrifying thing we will ever do. Because to connect means to reveal something unpolished, to risk not being met, to open a door without knowing if the person on the other side will step through or walk away. Because when someone shows us kindness, true, no strings attached, grounded kindness, it can hit us in the most unexpected places. It cuts through the performance, the posturing, the I've got it all together act. Kindness doesn't ask us to impress, it asks us to be real. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying because being real, being seen, that's where the pain lives. That's where the fear of rejection hides. That's where the old voices come back and whisper, if they really knew you, they wouldn't stay. If they see your fear, your flaws, your need, they'll leave. So we keep the armor on. We stay busy, sarcastic, distracted. We keep things surface level because surface is safe. But then someone comes along and suddenly that wall we've built starts to crack. Not because they're tearing it down, but because their presence says, you don't have to hide with me. And in that moment, a choice arises. Do we step toward the connection or do we retreat into the armor? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Kindness forces a decision. It asks, will you let yourself be known? And even though that's what we crave, deep down we all want to be known and loved, it's also what we fear most. Because knowing comes with risk, and risk means vulnerability. And vulnerability, it's the rawest thing there is. It's sitting across from someone who sees you and doesn't flinch. It's letting the guard down and not knowing what happens next. It's saying, yes, this is me, all of me, are you still here? And so in a strange twist, kindness can make people recoil, not because it's bad, but because it breaks the emotional distance they've learned to live behind. It pulls us out from behind the curtain. It says, I want to know you, not just your resume, your opinions, or your mask, but you. And that's sacred, but it's also scary. Because when you've spent years building a safe, curated version of yourself, someone offering real kindness can feel like a threat to everything you've used to stay protected. So if someone flinches at your kindness, or if you find yourself resisting someone else's, it's not always a rejection. It's often fear, the deep human fear of letting someone close enough to see the mess. But here's the beautiful part. Connection only happens when we dare to be raw, when we stop performing. And when we say, I'm scared too, but I'm here, kindness is an invitation into that space. Not a demand, not a manipulation, not a performance, invocation to be human, to be seen, to be loved. And yes, that's terrifying, but it's also where everything real begins. Kind people become mirrors reflecting back what others aren't ready to see, crafted in a raw, honest, and psychologically grounded tone. Kind people become mirrors reflecting back what others aren't ready to see. Let's get one thing straight. Kindness isn't neutral. Kindness carries weight. It shifts rooms, it exposes things, it calls things up to the surface that many people spend a lifetime trying to bury. That's why kindness is not always welcomed, not because it's bad, not because it's fake, but because it becomes a mirror, and mirrors are confronting. See, when someone shows up with real kindness, when they choose compassion instead of sarcasm, generosity instead of judgment, presence instead of performance, it disrupts the emotional status quo because it forces people to see, and not just see you, see themselves. They start seeing what they've turned away from, the parts of themselves they've neglected, the softness they've armored over, the gentleness they once had but abandoned to survive. Your kindness holds up a mirror, and what's reflected back isn't always comfortable. It might show them how cynical they've become. It might show them how guarded they are. It might remind them of how long it's been since they offered kindness to anyone, including themselves. And here's the painful part. And not everyone is ready for that reflection. When people are not ready to face themselves, they will often project their discomfort outward. And if you're the mirror, you become the problem. They say you're too much. They accuse you of pretending to be better than everyone else. They call you soft, naive, manipulative, fake. But it's not about you. It's not even about your actions. It's about what your presence awakens in them. Your kindness threatens their emotional economy because it quietly says, there's another way to live. And for someone who's learned to survive through numbness, anger, sarcasm, or self-protection, that message is not always received as hope, it's received as confrontation. Not because you said anything confrontational, but because your way of being reveals what they've stopped allowing themselves to be. That's the power of kind people. You become a mirror for what's possible. And what's possible is often the scariest thing for someone who has lived in resignation. Because if kindness is possible, if connection is real, if softness can coexist with strength, and then suddenly the walls they built around their heart start to look less like protection and more like a prison. And that's a terrifying realization. So they resist the mirror, they push it away, they try to shatter it, not because they hate you, but because the image you reflect is too close, too true, too vulnerable. And you have to know that. Being a kind person doesn't mean you'll be liked. Sometimes it means you'll be misunderstood. Sometimes it means you'll be rejected. Sometimes it means you'll be resented for showing what someone isn't ready to feel. But that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means your kindness has depth, it has clarity. It's not just a behavior, it's a truth. And truth, when it walks into a room, always reveals what's hiding in the shadows. So don't dull your mirror just to make people comfortable. Don't shrink your kindness just to keep the peace. Be the mirror. Let your way of being reflect love, even when it's met with fear. Let your gentleness reveal strength, even when it's misunderstood. Let your light uncover shadows, even when people squint. Because someone, somewhere, will see themselves in your reflection and come back to life because of it. And that's the quiet revolution of kindness. The hate isn't about you, it's about the fear your kindness awakens in them, written in a tone that blends deep compassion with courageous truth-telling. The hate isn't about you, it's about the fear your kindness awakens in them. Let's name something hard but necessary. Sometimes when you lead with kindness, you're going to be hated for it. Not disliked, not quietly avoided, hated. And that can be shocking, especially if your kindness is real, especially if you're not pretending, especially if you show up from a genuine place of care, presence, and integrity. You're not trying to prove anything, you're not playing games, you're just being who you are. And still, someone responds with coldness, with sarcasm, with distance, or worse, with outright hostility. And when that happens, the temptation is to turn inward and ask, what did I do wrong? Was I too much? Did I come across as fake? Should I have held back more? But here's the truth you have to anchor into over and over again. The hate isn't about you. It's about what your kindness awakens in them. The real kindness, rooted, calm, confident kindness is powerful. It reaches into places people have worked very hard to keep locked up. And if someone has spent years burying their own softness, if they built their identity on being tough, guarded, unshakable, your kindness becomes a threat. And not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence unsettles something in them. Your gentleness reminds them of a part of themselves they exiled long ago. Your warmth evokes a longing they don't know how to hold. Your openness shines light on a wound they've never had the courage to feel. And that's terrifying. So instead of sitting with the fear, instead of asking, why does this stir something in me? Some people project that discomfort outward. They call you weak. They mock your sincerity. They treat your compassion like it's a trick. They resist the very thing they crave because they've convinced themselves it's dangerous to want it. That's not about your heart. It's about their story. You just happen to stand too close to the places they've tried to forget. So when they respond with hate, when they shut down, lash out, or try to belittle your light, it's not because your kindness is wrong. It's because your kindness touches something raw in them. And people often hate what they're afraid to need. They hate the tenderness that reminds them of what they lost. They hate the hope that risks disappointment. They hate the love that exposes all the places where love was missing. So what do? You stay kind, not because you need to be liked, not because you're trying to change them, But because kindness, when it's real, isn't reactive, it's rooted. It doesn't perform. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't flinch when it's misunderstood. It knows the difference between what is yours and what is theirs. And the hate, the resistance, the defensiveness, that's theirs. You don't have to carry it. You don't have to fix it. You don't even have to explain yourself. You just have to stay grounded in your truth. Because the world needs more people whose kindness doesn't disappear when it's confronted, who don't harden in response to fear, who understand that sometimes the greatest courage is to remain soft in a world that misreads softness as threat. So yes, your kindness might awaken fear, but it might also awaken healing, awaken memory, awaken possibility. And that is your quiet, unshakable power. So here we are facing a truth many people never say out loud.